Welcome back, all. So today I'm gonna go ahead and go ahead and have a short debrief in regard to the MAC addresses. Now, since this is the wireless section, and since we're gonna do a lot of playing around with the wireless, it is necessary for us to be familiar with this concept. So this is not going to be a long tutorial, but this is how you are identified on the wireless network uniquely. You also get a dynamic LAN IP address, but your devices are uniquely identified on the network in regard to the MAC addresses. Now you might wonder, well, Ermin, there are a lot of MAC addresses out there, and what good is it really changing it? Who really knows my MAC address? Well, your manufacturer knows your MAC address. Uh, they know where it has been bought, and if you bought it with a credit card, they know who bought it. So they know who the device belongs to exactly, down to the name, last name, address of residence, known address of residence, phone number, etc. So it's not a bad idea to have to have the ability to actually change a MAC address. Now, here's what a changing of MAC address will do for you, and here's what it will not do for you. For example, let's say that you're in an airport and the Wi-Fi and you have 15 minutes of free Wi-Fi. So every new person that comes there has 15 minutes of free Wi-Fi. But how does the router know who are the new people coming? Well, every time it sees a unique MAC address, it gives 15 minutes. So you can have potentially indefinite amount of minutes available, because once it disconnects you just change the MAC address, and there you go. You have free Wi-Fi forever, or for as long as you're at the airport anyway. But that's not really a legal thing to do, or I'm actually not sure if that's legal or not, but in any case, I wouldn't advise it. It's just something that's out there in the realm of possibility. So, how do you find your MAC address? Well, if you type in ifconfig, this is just my interface that I've been playing around with. Let's use one of my wired interfaces. Every network interface has a MAC address. So here you go. This is its MAC address. You can see it right here. And this is for one, and this is for the other. Now, you can even pretend to be somebody else on the network by using the MAC address of an authenticated client to an access point. So if somebody's authenticated with their phone, you can pretend to be them. This is not going to grant you automatic authentication to the access point. Just so you know, I had some questions from before in that regard. What it will grant you is the ability to pretend as somebody else, and that ability will in turn give you certain privileges. It will give you certain abilities because I don't know. You have, for example, pin lockouts. So somewhere on some routers, the pin lockouts won't occur if the pin is being attempted by the router itself or by an authenticated client, etc. So it will also give you the ability to, for example, pretend to be for example, you could be a DNS server, or you could basically pretend to be a router itself on the network. So it does give you a large amount of options. I'm going to go and explain them in great detail later on, but for the time being, let me just go ahead and finish this. Anyway, a MAC address, what is it? Well, that's a Media Access Control Address. That's what MAC stands for. This is also referred to as a physical address, and every computer which has a network card has this unique identifier. Actually, this is not a unique identifier of the computer. Rather, instead, this is a unique identifier of your network interface on your machine. But anyway, how do we change it? How do we manipulate this MAC address? Well, use a tool called Mac Changer, and you can install it by typing in dnf install Mac Changer. And I do believe that I have it installed, but apparently there might be some updates on the system. I should have just used the cached version, but shouldn't have went into the repos, but doesn't matter. Shouldn't take long anyway. While that is happening, actually just let it roll. you see these first set of 6 numbers. You have 6 digits here and you have 6 digits here. These are all hexadecimal digits. The first 6 will identify the manufacturer of the device. Well, not this one because that's a virtual interface. But here, the first 6 will actually identify the manufacturer of the device, and the other 6 actually identify the device itself down to the model. Now, you won't have access to the other 6, to the second 6, but to the first 6, this is a matter of public records. So if you go ahead and copy this, and let's say you open up your browser, you can go ahead and type in MAC address lookup, and I'll just type in not this one. How about this one? Yep, let's just Control V here and look the MAC address up, and sure enough, it says Asus Tech Computer Incorporated, which is actually true because I do have a Asus motherboard, and my Asus motherboard does have network adapters on it. So I am dead on the spot. How does this help you at all? Well, first of all, this is how it can help you. Let's say you're looking for the vulnerabilities of a certain router, or you're looking for the specifications of a certain router, but you don't know which router it is. And you're in the wireless network, and you get the MAC address, and with the MAC address you can see who the manufacturer is immediately. So that manufacturer has only a set number of routers which they ship, for example, for home use or for a business or something like that. So if you are targeting a home device, you can immediately know which router is in use without any problems, just by knowing its MAC address. So you will be able to figure out who the manufacturer is, and immediately you will be able to just go online and look up for the routers that the manufacturer ships, for example, for home use. And even you can narrow your search down even further by just looking for a specific region for shipping, and that's like you have the router pretty much down to its model, and even down to the firmware that it's using. Okay, anyway, this is done, so it doesn't have anything to install because it is already installed, but doesn't really matter. For you, it will install it. And if you type in Mac changer -- help, changer -- help, you will see that it doesn't have that many options. Well, relatively. So the M version, the -m argument, will actually set the MAC address of your interface, the one that you're attempting to change, to this particular MAC address that you specify, which means MAC changer gives you the ability to actually pretend to be somebody else on the network, which is very nice. A random flag is the one that is most commonly used, because people generally just want to be anonymized and not necessarily pretend to be somebody else. Keep in mind that the MAC address does not leave your local network. So it does not leave your local network. It has no interaction with the greater internet, so to say. It doesn't leave the network from which you are originating. Let's put it like that. You also have these things to basically set a random MAC address of the same kind, or set a random MAC of any kind. These things are not bad because you can have MAC filtering on the wireless access points, especially business ones. And if you can find the MAC address of an authenticated client, which is real easy, I will show you that later, you can set the MAC address of that particular client, and then you will be able to log into the network. You'll be able to authenticate to the network, provided you know the login credentials, without any problems. But it can be an open network, which doesn't have a password, but it has MAC filtering options put in place. So only a certain set of MAC addresses can connect to it, but it doesn't have a password. So if you just pretend to be one of the authenticated clients, there you go. You're going to connect to it. don't change the vendor bytes, that means that it won't change the first 6, but rather instead you will stay within the same vendor, but it will change the model, for example. The bytes that refer to the model. The show will basically give you the current status listing on the currently used MAC addresses and the permanent ones that are actually burnt in. So let's go ahead and have a look how this works. So let's type in MAC Mac changer -s. Okay, it doesn't work. Why? God. Dash show, but I have to give it a device. I always hated the device names on Fedora. It's like one of the worst naming standards for the network devices. So ENP9S0, ENP9S0. I shall have to change them one day manually and set them to whatever is my liking. So the current MAC, this is the current MAC that is in use, and this is the permanent one. So we can play around with it, but let's see. Let's use the -r flag, ENP9S0. And there you go. So it says that there is a current MAC address and that there is a permanent MAC address, but then there is a new one which has been added. If it doesn't work for some strange reason, you can type in ifconfig enp9s0 and then type in down and then apply the MAC changer and then type in up. So this is gonna help you out with that if you get an error or something like that. Now, if I just use the show command, you can see that there is some current MAC address of some sort, and then there is a permanent one. But the current one is the one that is actually in use. So this is the general syntax. You give the argument, you give the interface name, and if that argument requires something additional, like a MAC address that you specifically want to type in, you can type it in there. Here, let me just... Yep, so --mac and then equals, and then just substitute x's with the MAC address that you would like to be there. I would actually, in general, perhaps you shouldn't use the -random, just not set a fully random MAC address, but rather instead to set a random vendor MAC, either of the same kind, or rather instead, perhaps a better option is to set a random vendor MAC of any kind. So I wouldn't really use the -r in general. I would use the -a because I have a bigger passing chance as I'm a legit device and not just some random MAC address. Anyway, gonna bid you farewell, and we'll see you in the follow-up, hopefully. Well, actually, not in the follow-up. We'll see you in the next sub-chapter, or however you wish to call it.